As you know, we are in this series, It's Better Together, and we've been talking about some very interesting topics, honey.
We have.
Are you ready?
I'm hoping so. We should probably pray first.
Yes, I did a survey, and I found out that this is the consensus. Men don't like to change. I was surprised. I was taken back. I was just like, are
shocking?
you kidding? Yes, it was shocking information. Men do not like to change. And I thought, how sad.
I have no comment.
Anyway, we're going to have to
wise.
work on that, man. That should be the first thing out. Oh, yes, my husband, he loves change. No, that's not happening. So we've been talking about Better Together. And first of all, we want you to know that most of this information that we're getting is from the Focus on the Family Hope Restored retreat that Crystal and I went to. We have to give them really most of the credit, if not all the credit. We are going to interject some content from 2 or 3 different books that we have dealt with. And I also have a confession to make. We were actually preparing this message, and my wife says, I don't feel like we live much in the cozy garden. She says, I feel convicted like a hypocrite talking to these guys about the cozy garden, and I'm not cozy at all right now. And I just want you to know that if you think that our cozy garden looks like something that your cozy garden doesn't look like, that's a lie. We are constantly in the battlefield for the cozy garden and what that coziness actually looks like. So as we were talking about that, we got into all kinds of things, because you know what? There's nothing like studying a topic that you don't do well. Men. And it's questioning you whether you need to change. And of course, I told her every reason why she was wrong and why the cozy garden was her problem and not mine. It didn't go really well. So let's talk about the cozy garden. What is this cozy garden we talk about?
Wait, we need to pray. We need to pray.
We need to pray at the end. It's going to be much better.
No, we need to pray now.
All right, let's pray, sir. Father, we thank you for your goodness to us. And we know this, that this relationship that you created for us as humanity called marriage is a beautiful thing. It was designed by you, and for your glory. And yet man has messed it up. Lord, we have come up with every reason and every way to make it the most complicated relationship on the planet. And in reality, that's not exactly what your desire was. So Lord, I pray that we learn from your word today. And we learn and make a decision to change or grow. In Jesus' precious name, amen. Amen. So the cozy garden, as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted for prayer, is about this idea of a spiritual place. It's a place where there is intention, okay? Where two are growing together in Christ. It's a place where this lived out relationship is shown to be Christ-like. It's a place where two describe or convey to the world this idea that they give God glory in what they do. It's an interactive space. It's not a stagnant space. It's not a space that stays the same. It's not a space where, hey, like my wife told me earlier, you know, sometimes you're so emotionally detached. I think you think when you told me you loved me when you married me 35 years ago, that was good. You know, when those kind of comments are coming at you, you really got to watch out. But the truth is, it's growing. This space is a growing space. It's an interactive space, but it really should be a restful place, okay? In other words, a place that your marriage should become is a place of rest, not wrestling, okay? Rest. And I think that that's a tough one. How about this one? It's a vulnerable place, a place where you can truly be known, okay? A place that's supposed to be safe, where you feel like you can engage in conversation of deep personal concern and have a person to listen and to encourage you in. It's an intimate space. Of course, we talked about that a little bit. It is where sex is. It's the design of oneness that Christ has designed it to be. And finally, it's a relational space. It's relational. You know, so many times we're transactional, right? Our relationships are transactional. If you do this, I do this. If you do this, No, this is a relational place. This is where both people are mutually on the same team, going the same direction for this same reason. Crystal used this acronym last week. It's this idea of the sweet spot for all you golfers or baseball players or whoever, the sweet spot is that place where everything comes together. You don't have to swing the hardest. The club does the work, you do the work, and great things happen. All right, so now that we know about this garden, how can we create, honey, a wonderful and beautiful and amazing, life-changing cozy garden?
Well, a little context to Ron's statement. As we are working on this and just really thinking through it, it is very, very difficult to think about all the different things that have happened in our lives that begin to affect the space that you interact together. A lot of times, you guys remember the concept of the yard. Here you are, you got the space around you, that's your yard. Your husband has his space around him, that's his yard. And when each person is in their own yard functioning, everything goes well. Well, then all of a sudden you have this time when your lives come together and you've got to solve problems. You've got to talk through situations. You're trying to think about what's best for each person. And there's so many things that begin to influence and affect that space together. And it was just very challenging as we began to think about what are the things that really do mold that space. So the first thing is a very big one is safety. How safe are you in a relationship? Now, I hear the term safety and my mind almost immediately goes to physical safety, but we want you guys to think beyond that. We want you guys to think emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that your relationship, the space where you interact, that cozy garden space, is safe in all those aspects. It's important to understand that safety leads, if you have that safe environment, it leads to openness, and openness will lead to intimacy. And so just kind of think about that idea, and yeah, we do have a slide on that. Safety creates openness, and openness creates the intimacy that both people truly are desiring in the relationship. Safety allows us to experience a deep sense of, like Ron had said, being known and knowing another person. You don't feel threatened when you have that safe space. Another thing to think about is it's your responsibility to protect that. If you are not feeling safe, you are responsible for your safety, but it's also up to you to influence the safety of the other person. You have to think about the actions that you are doing that could influence and affect the other person as well. So some questions I think that came to me that would be, do I help create safety in the relationship? Would be thinking, what am I feeling now? In this moment, what is happening? How do I process what I am feeling? Why am I feeling that? And what does this feeling show me? Because as you assess those questions, you can begin to understand why you might not be feeling safe. What are things that are happening between you and the other person? Was it a comment that was said? Was it the way you might have felt attacked? So if you can begin to articulate and think through some of those questions, you maybe would be able to begin to think through, why am I not feeling safe? And if I am not, am I creating that unsafe environment for the other person in the relationship? Creating safety takes significant time, attention, and energy. It is not something that is just going to happen. And if you've had an event where maybe there's been physical abuse in some way, mental, safety is greatly compromised. And so you have to step back and ask yourself some really important questions to say, how can I feel safe in this relationship and contribute to the safety that the other person is feeling? So that was the number one in reference to safety. Think of it kind of as an umbrella over your relationship even. If you don't have that safety over the relationship, real growth and health of a relationship struggles to grow and thrive.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we're finding out as we've been studying this is that men and women define safety differently. We were just talking about, I said, I feel completely safe with you because I'm thinking about safety in willingness to share, or I'm sitting down and talking. I'm not afraid that my wife is going to trample on my emotions if I share I'm struggling with something. Where safety starts to become an issue is when those emotions get trampled on. In other words, that person discounts those feelings. When you find yourself discounting each other's feelings, and like I said, it's different for men and women, you find this safety issue really becoming struggle.
Yeah.
Where women attach safety to, well, like our conversation, women attach safety to everything. Like it's the dog going out to the car out front to the, I mean, everything. Everything is tied to safety, where men are like, safety is just an X. I feel safe when that happens. And so, men, we got to realize something. We think, why do you feel that way? Because that's our first response, right? Defensive. Like, that's dumb. I have a problem called dismissiveness when I get my triggers pushed. And the reality is, safety for them is so much more complicated. And if we're curious about our spouse and we truly want to get out of the relationship the things that we're looking for, we have to become more intrigued and more interested in a woman's or a man's position on safety in the relationship. I think it's one of the hardest things probably for men to understand, a little bit more easier for us as men to simplify it for sure.
So the next part that we think is really important is healthy boundaries create safety. How do we have healthy boundaries in our life to recognize when one person feels a different way than the other person? Because that's most important to understand is each person can feel differently about it. So how do we help each other and value how the other person is feeling? So healthy boundaries.
Yeah, and so boundaries are tough, right? Because boundaries sometimes feels like you're holding back something. When you say, hey, I need to have a boundary in this relationship because my spouse is trampling on my heart or my feelings or whatever, and so I don't feel safe. So we create these boundaries, but boundaries aren't designed to destroy a relationship. They're to enhance a relationship. The boundary that we have set in our lives in a relationship should still keep Christ in focus, should keep ourselves and our health in focus, and the relationship we have with others. Boundaries, I would say, are characterized by love, by honor, by respect. These are the kinds of things we want to be thinking about when we're thinking about boundaries of emotional safety. Because it's very critical for us to have safety, but we also don't want to get trampled on. A lot of baggage comes into relationships. My wife came from, this even came up, my wife came from the perfect home where she was loved and she got everything she wanted.
What was the word today?
It was a good word. And entitled?
No.
Okay, that was
Embraced and embraced.
She was embraced. Yes, she was the only girl in the house. Anyway, I, on the other hand, of course, you know my story. I don't have any of that. There's none of that. So it's fight, live, survive. And so it's so funny how we see things. I don't care about a lot of things, and she's like, well, I do. And so these boundaries that we have to set up that says, hey, listen, this is who I am, and this is who you are, and let's make sure that we're not trampling each other. And so we set these boundaries. The illustrations are like this. A prison guard. Okay, a boundary like a prison guard would be, listen, no one goes in and no one goes out. We have a little image here that comes up with this idea of, no, we don't.
That's
the wall.
Yeah,
I'm getting ahead of myself.
So
this illustration is, I might have to have a boundary that says no one comes in. I don't know if you've really been hurt where you don't trust anybody with the inside person that you are, but I guarantee you many in this room do. And you're like, I'm not sure I'm letting anyone in. So you have this prison guard mentality. Some of you guys are like a guard at a museum. Museum guards are a little different. You can come into the museum, you can look around, you can see stuff, you might be able to interact with a few things, but some things you just can't touch. So you guys have a little different boundaries in your life, and you're thinking, okay, this is safe, I feel okay here. And then, of course, there's the gate, the guard at the gate. And so it's just open and close, come in, come out, do what you want, have a relationship that is just free flowing. And sometimes you know people like this. They walk into a relationship and they vomit on you everything that they have ever done in their entire life, and you're like, I can't take all this, right? I mean, it's just, wow, there is no limit. And other people will come into a relationship like you would talk to them for 5 weeks and go, I didn't know that about you. right? Or 5 years. Or for me, when I told my story and my testimony when I took this church over at age 50, I had high school kids say, I had no idea. I went to high school with you for 3 years, and I never not once knew that your family had all passed away. Close to the vest. You don't share everything that you go through. So you have these ideas, these boundaries.
But ultimately, we just mentioned
Yeah,
really
go
fast,
ahead.
the prison guard boundary would not be the boundary that is protecting or thinking of the Lord, of yourself, and others.
That's
It is
correct.
very self-centered when you have like a prison guard mentality.
Absolutely.
So the ones that are healthier is the museum and the idea of a gate.
Yeah.
You open and close to create safe space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing that we need to know about boundaries is this, and this is where really people struggle. Boundaries aren't used to punish your spouse
Yeah, or anybody, yeah.
or anyone. Boundaries are used for you, we're going to find out later, to really take care of yourself. But so often, couples use boundaries as ways to get back at our spouses. Hey, you just don't know me, stay out, I don't want you in. And that is not the way God is desiring it to be, all right? So I want you to be thinking about that. Here's an example. I'm not ready to discuss this. Here's an example of a boundary. I'm not ready to discuss the issue about my work, my relationship, or a major decision right now. You know, it's a boundary. I want you to know, I know we need to talk about this, but I'm not willing to talk about it right now. Please give me some space and give me some time to think about this, to get it all figured out in my own head before I jump in. Sometimes one spouse, and there's a crisis at hand, they're all in, solve this right now. The other person's like, whoa, time out. I need some space, okay? Now, it is okay for the spouse that's waiting, like eagerly, like, let's get an answer. Like, that's what I am. I'm the person who basically answers before the person even is finished speaking. I just said that out loud, didn't I? Yeah. It's okay for them to say, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Do you need a couple hours, a day? In other words, it's okay to interact on that, but it's also okay to set the boundary that says, hey, I need a little bit of this time. And I also think it's important that you have a contingency plan. You need to understand that boundaries are going to be pushed. I'm sure you've never done this, but you know when your wife or you have a boundary and they jump into your yard with 2 feet and they're trying to dig up the plants or tear down the building, you have to understand, hey, this happens. I think one of the things that we overreact when people go beyond the boundary because I think it's so personal. Like I've asked you not to do this and you did it anyway and it's so personal. Sometimes we just need to step back and say, hey, it's really okay. I know this person is probably hurting. The reason why they're breaking the boundary is because they're insecure or they have another situation. It's hard for us to take our eyes off ourselves in those situations, but it really is the healing part of knowing, hey, this person that is breaking this boundary really is hurting. They're really hurting, or they really feel the need to push or prod. And although it's frustrating when you're the one when the boundary's being broken, it is important.
It is, and I think when the boundary is broken, something that you have to do is reestablish the boundary in a loving way, say, hey, and it could mean that the relationship has to take another step back so that trust can be built again. But ultimately, both people have to recognize and respect a boundary when somebody has asked for it. Yeah. And if it's done in a loving way, boundaries they can be beneficial.
Yeah, for sure.
Walls are something else that happens when safety is an issue. And walls will affect the cozy garden. Some people are really good at building walls, and they build those walls because they do not feel safe. Whether it's a real or perceived threat, they will build a wall because they are not feeling safe. So the other person, they can tend to feel like, well, I'm going to tear down your wall, I'm going to scale the wall, I'm going to judge your wall, I'm going to dishonor the wall, because what you are doing is leaving me out. But if we, or the person who has not built the wall, if we can take a step back and say, what will be most productive for the relationship and that person is that we will honor the wall and care about the person who built the wall. If the person who built the wall feels cared for, they alone, on their own terms, will begin to lower the wall that they have built. But many of us know that the more you try to attack the wall, the higher it goes. So remember that when you are dealing with a spouse who has kind of put up a roadblock in the relationship, the best, most effective way is to honor that and to just love through that, so that in time, as they do their self-care of what has happened, how do I make the adjustments, I know that this person is loving me, giving me space, it is safe to take down that wall. This is where you made the cute little
Yes.
little things for us. So let's talk about ineffective ways. One of the things that can happen is we want to defeat the wall. So we have a cute little guy with a hammer. He's behind the wall, and we think, hey, I want to take down that wall. What you have done is hurting me. You've built a wall. You're leaving me out. We take it personal, and so we think, I'll tear down your wall.
I think that I just want to jump in here
Yeah.
to make some clarity. The wall is something that somebody creates to protect themselves. And when we say, hey, somebody's trying to beat the wall down, it's the person on the outside of the wall that's trying to tear the wall down. Yeah. It's really, these three examples are about a person on the outside. They feel like they're outside, and so they feel like the right thing to do is to tear the wall down. Let me help you out with your problem. Have you ever said that, men? Let me help you out with your problem. That never goes well, that I found. But that's kind of what she's talking about here.
Right.
That's good.
Right. The next one would be, why are you hurting me? So the person built the wall, the person on the outside, again, is taking it personally. Why are you building this wall to hurt me? And they make it all about themselves instead of recognizing the person behind the wall and the hurt that they are experiencing. So the idea is that you're just banging your head against the wall, and in doing that, what you are trying to do is almost manipulate the other person to feel bad for the wall that they have built. And that is just wrong. Nobody wants to feel manipulated. No one wants to feel like they are being taken advantage of because of their own feelings. Here's a person in the relationship, friendship, whatever it is. They have a wall built. They're struggling with whatever is going on in their life. And then this person comes in and tries to make it about them and says, I want you to tear down this wall, and so then this person's almost like peering over the wall, and they're like, you're blooding yourself against hitting my wall, but this isn't about you. It's about me and what I am going through behind this wall. So it's really important to not make a person feel manipulated, misunderstood, because you want to tear down that wall in your timing because you think their wall is personally an attack against you. Try to separate yourself and say, this isn't about me, this is about the person who is hurting. How can I assist and love them well? The next one would be, we just decide, you know what, if a person's gonna build the wall, you know what, you're hopeless, I'm out of here. I'm not gonna stick around, I'm not gonna deal with your petty drama, and peace out. You got a wall, I'm out. Well, then what happens is the person who's behind the wall, as they begin to feel a little safer, they begin maybe to peer over, and no one is sitting there. No one's waiting. No one cared or was curious. Why were they struggling? No one was there trying to love them while they were hurting. And so it's important to understand that walls, while they are hard for a person in the relationship, and it will affect the cozy garden, the best thing you can do is to step back. The term I'm going to use for this is waiting well. This is your best option when somebody is struggling and has a wall. And the waiting is that you are sitting on the other side of the wall and you are loving and you are waiting. Now, is this painful for the person on the other side? It absolutely is. It can be very, very difficult while somebody is dealing with their issues. It can be very painful and very hard, but the idea is, through the grace of God and with the help of the Lord, you can be somebody who is waiting patiently and loving them well while they have this wall.
Yeah, walls are tough. I think we all have them, and I think we lie to ourselves and say we don't many times, especially men. We like to protect ourselves because we're waffles and we want to put things in boxes when we build walls. The next thing that has to do, that really impacts the cozy garden, obviously, is the age-old communication idea. Communication is the number one thing that impacts this area of relational interaction. How you communicate, what you communicate, how you communicate with every part of who you are. Such a spiritual thing. Communication allows us or makes us either defensive or angry or hostile or closed off. I use the word dismissive. I'm very emotionally detached, and so I dismiss everything like it's going to go right off my back because I don't have to deal with that. And so you need to grasp that communication is so important. Proverbs chapter 15:1 says this, and you should probably write some of these down on just how to talk to each other. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. I mean, how many times have we come into a situation, I'm guilty, and our language, our volume just goes up instead of down? One of the things we recognized going to Hope Restored was the incredible ability of our counselor to talk in such a calm voice. I'm telling you, I asked the guy, I said, did you get trained to do that? He said, yeah, 30 years of dealing with people. I was shocked. I mean, it didn't matter how high or how low or what, it was just calmness. And Proverbs 15:1 says that's exactly the way in which we should react. You know, as we monitor our human spirit and allow the fruit of the Holy Spirit to guide us in our interactions, trust and in loving communication starts to take over naturally. The point is this: when we wake up every morning and say, I'm going to glorify God, I'm going to live a certain way, I'm going to do a certain thing, we're going to find ourselves here glorifying God because our language and the way we speak to each other will slowly change. It really is in perspective. Who am I speaking to? I'm afraid most men in the room would never, ever, ever speak to their boss like they speak to their wife, and vice versa. Why is that? Because you can control your mouth when you want to, or when something like your job is at stake. Now, we're living in a society now where that's not necessarily the case. Everybody's yelling at everybody, and that's a classic example. If they're yelling in public at those in authority, just think what their home life's like. It's crazy talk. So this idea is very, very important. It's an important part of communication. It requires that you also become an effective listener. Communication is not just talking, it's listening to the spouse of your heart. In the Cozy Garden, when we're talking about relationships, if your spouse doesn't feel like you know and have heard her heart, you're going to struggle. Proverbs 15:23 says this: to make an apt or appropriate answer is a joy to a person or a man, and a word in season, how good is it? The right words of encouragement, the calmness of a voice, this is what helps Cozy Garden relationships. It's important to remember that you use every opportunity to affirm your love for your spouse and God when you have or resolve a conflict. Sometimes I think that men, I'll use myself, we don't think about finishing a sentence or with the idea that I just want you to know I care about you. Or, hey, I just want you to know I love you. I want you to know we differ in this thought, but it doesn't change my feelings for you. I still care about you. We don't speak like that. We don't use that kind of language. James 1:19 says this: know this, my beloved brother, let every person be quick to hear, be slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of a man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. But be a doer of the word, and not a hearer only, deceiving yourselves. Guys, words that we use, the way we think about our spouse, the way we even engage in the conversation, when we remove entitlement or our way or our selfishness out of the picture, transforms the way we communicate. So, according to this passage, we protect our cozy garden. We must what? Listen before reacting. How often does that happen? How often do we listen before any reaction happens? Listen to the whole story, process it, and then speak. Be slow to speak. Let your emotions calm down. This is hard. This is a difficult thing. Why? Because most of us use our words to actually amp up our emotions. And if you're like me, you're animated, you're loud already. Even when you're calm, your hands are moving and flailing around, and all of a sudden, you're just like, why are you angry all the time? And I'm like, I'm not angry. Then I get angry that she says I'm angry. Then I get angrier. right?
But you weren't angry.
I am going to calmly respond to that. Don't explode in anger. Stop all lying, cheating, profanity, immoral behavior. Don't don't throw in people's faces your life story or what they're not adequate about, or don't compare them to a pornography or a sexual encounter or a former wife or whatever that looks like. It's amazing what people will say to each other in the heat of battle. And you can't take those words back. One of the things Crystal and I have noticed in our counseling over the last 5 years is the language that people use with each other has gone exponential. I just couldn't even dream of saying some of the things that I've heard people say, and I think, and in my mind, I'm thinking, how do you expect them to recover from that? I want you to ask that question. When you get angry, how do you expect your spouse to recover from that? Blow that off? Pretend like it didn't happen? Forget the verse that out of the heart the mouth speaks? I mean, what are you expecting? This language matters. Obviously, we would encourage you to find and act on your faith and not on your feelings when it comes to communication. Boldly believe God regardless of how your mate responds. In other words, if you respond and you are the most calm person in all the world and they still blow up, trust the word. What you did was right. And because she or he blew up is not a reason for you now to say, well, I tried that calmness, but now I'm going to go all in. That's not the answer. That is not going to help you in any way. If you focus on yourself and your rights and the perceived wrongs of your spouse, you'll always find yourself divided. If it's always about them and not about you and what you can do and what you bring and what you're bringing to the cozy garden, you're going to fail miserably. Colossians 4:6 says, let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each person. Every man in this room should know this verse by heart. It's your homework this week. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer your wife.
And your husband. We need that verse as well.
Never.
Yes.
I'm not saying that.
Yes. I had to tell you guys today, I was talking to him and he's like, what was that part about body language? What's your body language saying right now? And I felt really guilty because that's a part of communication. But anyhow, another really important part to the cozy garden and that space where you guys will interact is what is termed value and vulnerability. And these are two things. And let me say, value would be, am I worth someone's time? Okay? And vulnerability, can I trust someone not to hurt me? This is in every person's heart. From the time of birth, a child's value and vulnerability are shaped by the attentiveness of their parents. Now, parents, I really want you to hear this. It's so important for you to understand your greatest window of influence in a child's life, when all kinds of what we can't even fathom or understand or visibly see, but security and value, all of that is happening between the ages birth and age 5. It is so important. And yes, as they grow and continue to grow, but you are then working with what you did between birth and age 5. And that's not to make anybody like, I've messed this up. I want you to understand that then you are a little bit more in how am I dealing with things that happened subconsciously that you aren't even aware of, that is happening in the development of a child. And there's so many studies on that. I won't go on, but parents, I just want to encourage you, shepherd your child's heart well. Understand that, yes, maybe you might not understand completely everything that's happening, but how can you recognize that you showing up in your child's life, but with your presence, with your loving discipline of your children, that is so important to shape their character. And the Bible talks about how important that is. We discipline children because we love them. And so don't neglect shaping this in your child's life, their value and their vulnerability that happens during this time. Let me just see if I had something specific on that. Okay, because this is happening as a child, this value and vulnerability is shaping through parents' involvement in their life. As we transition and get older, if no one was doing that for us in our life, we tend to push that on other people, meaning, oh, now I didn't get that from my parents. I don't feel valued. I feel so vulnerable. Maybe there'll be a friendship that will make me feel valued and I can be vulnerable. Maybe there'll be a relationship, a dating relationship. If you take that then into marriage, many of us have heard the term codependency. You create this, now all my value and all the vulnerability in my life happens and is at stake because I have rested that in someone else in my life. So what we have to recognize is, how do we accept responsibility? As a child is growing, it is on the parents. But we have to help transition, and if no one helps transition, we have to recognize, am I trying to make somebody else make me feel valued? It's up to them before I feel valued or not. If I can't be vulnerable with them, then I'm always a wounded individual. And so value and vulnerability are a very important part of what you bring as you come into a cozy garden, that you are not saying, if you don't value me and I can't feel vulnerable, that's all on you, and now I'm a hopeless individual. So Proverbs 4:23 is just a really good verse that illustrates this, when it says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. And this proverb affirms the individual responsibility to monitor and invest in yourself in the sense of what you are bringing and how you are taking care of your heart. It also helps you realize the influence you have to show up for your spouse, because it says it is the wellspring of life. Well, if it's the wellspring of life for you, it's the wellspring of life for your spouse. So how are you showing up to give value and vulnerability and influence another person, but not make it that all of that is at stake in what the other person can do for you? Does that kind of clarify that?
Absolutely.
So, what happens in relationships is we give that away to somebody else. And so then we just lived in this crushed state if somebody doesn't value us the way we think we should be valued, or our vulnerability, the willingness to feel safe with somebody is being trampled on. Let me give you some examples of phrases that illustrate this. You made me think that when you said this. You made me believe this because all you ever talk about is ... You made me feel helpless because you never approve of anything I do. You made me lose my temper because of that tone you always use with me. So do you see how we put on someone else instead of taking responsibility for what we can, in the sense of that thought, where do I get my value, and how is my vulnerability shaped in this relationship? Each of these examples, the one is attributing their thoughts, their beliefs, their feelings, and their behavior to something that the spouse did. Instead of, as we talked about, in our own yard, we are responsible for our own thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and behavior. The idea is that we would never feel powerless in a relationship. That is not the goal of a relationship, and that's certainly not the goal of what is happening in the cozy garden, is for you to feel that unless you change, the other person will not accept you. That leads to power struggles. It's a cycle of dependency, hurt, disappointment. So the bottom line, when we think of value and vulnerability, we embrace the responsibility to monitor and care for our own value and vulnerability. It's what is at the core of a healthy relationship. It is not up to Ron to make me feel valued, and it's not up to him for that vulnerability. I can take responsibility for that in my own life.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a tough one, because I think everybody wants that in a relationship, but there's so much more a healthier way to handle that. And that's hard. You're
It is.
you're bringing the rain.
Well,
So I'm going to talk about
I think I'm
trustworthiness
guilty
after that.
sometimes.
Yes. So what do you do when your trust is broken, right? I mean, I don't know how many people I've talked to and says, I just can't trust them anymore, right? This is what we say to each other. I don't trust you. And if we don't say it, we think it, and we live accordingly.
Yeah.
In other words, I can't trust you to pick up the kids on time, pick the groceries up, remember anything. I mean, the list goes on and on. What is this idea about trust? How do you deal with trust? How do you handle it? What is it all about? How do you get it back? I think that everybody in the room needs to know that trust is one of those things that you can't make the other person trust you. Okay? There's nothing you could, if you've messed up, you could try and try and try, but you can't convince them to trust you. It's because you're trying the wrong thought. The idea is this: to make someone or to allow someone the freedom to trust you, you must live a trustworthy life. In other words, if I want to get someone to trust me, I need to be trustworthy. I need to focus on, am I doing and caring and being trustworthy, that she might or he might start to trust me again. Sometimes I believe that so many couples actually do the opposite. They do things on purpose that create questions or wonder that allows the other spouse to be untrustworthy. Where were you at? Why didn't you at your phone? And you say, well, I just shut it off because I don't want to answer it. I don't want to know I don't want you to know where I'm at. That was one of the things that came up recently. It was like, listen, I turn my phone off so my wife doesn't know where I'm at, and I tell her that. I said, well, that really builds a lot of trust, especially when you've done X, Y, Z. And they're like, well, she should trust me. I'm like, that doesn't work like that. So gaining trust is living a life that is trustworthy. Now again, you can't ever make them trust. You can live your whole life and be trustworthy. It's still up to that person to accept or to trust.
Yeah.
Do you realize that?
To open up their heart.
Absolutely.
And be willing. Yeah.
Our goal is to be trustworthy because, as we stated in other lessons, we stand before God to give an account. In other words, we're not trustworthy to gain trust from our spouse. We're trustworthy because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do with our life, with Christ. So think about that, trustworthiness. If you want trust, be trustworthy. It's kind of like if you want to have friends, be friendly. If you want to have friends, be friendly, biblical. Here's some practical ways to demonstrate trustworthiness. Be consistently aware of your spouse's value and vulnerability. Be aware of that. Be paying attention. This is aware demonstrates respect and sensitivity. You want to be trustworthy? Understand your wife's feelings or emotions towards a topic or a subject. Instead of stomping on it or dismissing her vulnerableness in a situation or his situation, be aware of it. You'll gain trust. It's a trustworthy thing to do. Do not interrupt when the other is speaking. I am so guilty of this.
I am too.
Never. Doesn't happen. I am the one that does it all the time. Because I think in my mind, why are you telling this? Let me just get the answer out, because my wife likes to use 3,000 words to say 5 words worth of content. Right? And if I just tell her what she's going to tell me eventually, we can be done with the conversation. That's the way I think. Not good, men. Don't do that.
Wait, if you just advise them not to do that,
Yeah,
does that mean you're advising yourself?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
I would never admit to you that I should not do that, but I will in front of all these people.
Okay.
Oh, it's so much easier in here than it is at home. I feel like I got a team on my side of men saying, amen.
No, not right there they didn't. They were like, oh, why did he say that?
Another way to gain trustworthiness is to use your words wisely. Yeah. Use your words wisely. You find yourself struggling with your spouse, pay attention to the words you use and how you use them and when you use them, and just be observant. You're an adult. You're not a child anymore, okay? You can't be like a 2-year-old throwing a little hissy fit. Grow up. Be a man. Be a woman. It's okay, all right? This is a tough one. Pay attention to the tone of voice that you're using when you make the request. I'm amazed in our 35 years, my wife will say, I know that tone. I'm like, you know what? That tone doesn't mean anything. I try to lie to her, and say it didn't really mean what I said. The truth is this: they know your tone, they know your look, they know your posture, they know it all. Both of you do it. And so we have to start recognizing that and or proving that the gesture is just natural habit and not actually linked to something that we have done in the past, which is what we do.
Listen, I even know the way he breathes. When he is getting frustrated, he has a certain breath that he takes. And that's my point. We all know it.
I have an eyebrow. She has it all. She has it all. So you're noticing the body language, noticing all these things matter. This is what helps develop trustworthiness. Allow the other to have feelings that they do without judgment. This is really important about the cozy garden. If a person wants to feel accepted for who they are, because that is one of my big ones, is like, listen, I already know I'm crappy and not good, so I don't need you to tell me. I've already got that down. But if you would just listen or just understand where I'm coming from, that means so much. You don't need to stomp. And I think that sometimes when we understand feelings, and I understand her feelings even, all of a sudden we're developing this trustworthiness that slowly gains this world of trust. Building a culture of respect and appreciation purposely by expressing gratitude and finding characteristics in your spouse that you can appreciate will help develop trustworthiness. There is not a person on the planet that doesn't like to consistently hear, "You're doing a great job. Hey, I really appreciate this. Hey, thank you for doing that." The problem is, we normally don't value hearing it, men, and so because we don't value hearing it like women, we don't say it. That's my story. Like, I don't take compliments well. If you give me a compliment, you're probably thinking, that guy doesn't even care. It's just, I don't know how to handle that. I have never done that. But because I don't do that, I don't dish them out. I don't give them like she needs them. I don't even do that probably half of my staff. And so I have to watch that. How do I pay attention to my own presupposition to not feel like that's important? It's good.
And I think the biggest thing to remember is it's little doses at a time. You're not going to just all of a sudden show up and just do some big gesture and all of a sudden, oh, you're such a trustworthy person. So hear all of that and just remember, if you're trying to build trust in your relationship from an infraction that has happened and made it difficult, and you want to build that, remember every little small step that you can make. And we gave you a few examples, but I'm sure you could even ask your spouse, what would build trustworthiness between us? And just begin to make small gestures. I think that's the most important part to remember.
Yep.
So we threw out a concept of wait well. How do we wait well when somebody has something happen in the relationship? When there's tragedy that has happened to one person and the other person is kind of sitting and just trying to wait while that person is dealing with the things that they are dealing with. How do we love them well? How do we wait well during that time? And a verse here says, Romans 12, verse 17. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. So I want to admit, when you are in the one who has to wait well at the time that a person is going through things, it is going to be hard on you, as I said earlier. You're going to experience some pain. You're going to feel rejected at times for what is happening in the other person's life. But try very hard to not take personally while you are waiting for the other person while they are going through what they are going through and trying to process what has happened. Don't take it personally. Try your best to say, how will I love this person well? Give them space. That's something that's very important. I am not saying that anybody has to be a doormat for the other person. I am not saying that you deserve to get treated rudely, disrespected. I am not saying that in any form or fashion. If you have to, while the other person is struggling, if you've got to establish a boundary or a little bit of a wall to wait while that person is dealing with what they are, you have to do that. I'm not saying that anybody should suffer abuse or anything while you wait well. I want to make sure that that is clear. But waiting well can mean that one spouse recognizes that they have been emotionally unsafe. So in a situation, maybe I would say, wow, I have been somebody who has not done a good job caring for my spouse, I've got to change that pattern of behavior. It might take a while for Ron to feel like he can let down a little bit of a guard that he had built because I am trying to prove myself trustworthy. I have to be the one because I recognize what I had done was not right, was harmful. And so he might be in a period of like, give me a little bit of time to see if and how I will begin to trust you again. So waiting well has different facets to it. Waiting well gives the spouse a chance to grow. And growing means you are trying. I think it's very important, guys. Listen, some people can get very stuck in life, and you might be married to a spouse who is stuck. So I want to encourage, it is loving for one spouse to say, you need to recognize what is happening in your life and what steps can I help you take some steps to grow. That's important. That is not unloving to love on another in a way that encourages them to either seek help, counseling, what stages of growth, because getting stuck in a relationship is not acceptable. It's very detrimental to the relationship. So recognize that while you are waiting and growing, you have to be growing. Don't just sit and say, well, this is all my junk and I'm just over here and you got to deal with my junk. That's not fair to the person who is trying to love you and wait well. You need to be a growing spouse when you have different issues going on. So being honest and sharing our feelings and our experiences without having the agenda to change the other spouse is difficult and demonstrates Holy Spirit control. And I'm going to tell you guys, that is something that I have really, really been working on. Because in all honesty, when I'm sharing something with him, it's because I want him to change. I want him to change his behavior. I want him to know, this is what you did, this is how it affects me, and I'm hoping he's going to change. And this convicts me so much because I have had to really stop and think, if Ron never changes, if he never stops that, how will I still love him well? How will I still wait for God's timing if God ever does convict him and he would ever change? So I need you guys to hear that again. When we are waiting well, our objective when we have conversation cannot be, I want to change that person. I want to tell them so that they're going to change their behavior. When we share things, we have to share it with the genuineness of our own, not to change the other person. And I'd already confessed that one to him before. So there's a lot of this that still is really convicting.
Oh, we're still working through it. We could probably do this for a lifetime.
Yes. Well, and waiting well, communication.
Yes, waiting well also plays into communication and how you communicate.
Yeah.
The truth is, helpful communication is good. How do I actually share with somebody that they are stuck in a gentle way that's not making them feel like I'm the one forcing the issue? That's hard. That's a delicate balance. How do I love them well? How do I just point out, hey, you might want to consider this. You don't have to. How do I do that? We counsel people who are in a tough relationship where one person is just stuck. They're stuck in depression. They're stuck in discouragement. And the person's like just getting fed up instead of saying, hey, how can I help you through this? This is tough. It is really hard.
Yeah, we don't want to minimize
communicate. We don't want to minimize
somebody
that.
is waiting because
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so communication in these areas, typically with frustration of men or women, it is these statistics. The tone we project with communicates 38% of our attitude. The tone. So when somebody says, I don't like that tone, what they're saying is 38% of what you've just communicated, all I need to know because of your tone. Our facial expression, body posture, hand gestures involve 55% before we've ever said anything. The tone of voice, how we're moving our body and engaging the conversation, we are up to big time and only 7. That means 93%, we're up to 7% of communication comes from the verbal contact.
That's kind of staggering. Like I said, today he got onto me. He's like, your body language. And I'm like, ugh.
7%. That's why men and women, the counselor was so amazing. No body language. Just talk to us like this the entire time. We're so glad. How can I help you? Now, at times it got annoying. It's like, just get to the point. Have some energy. That's what I want to say. Coach like a man. No. But the truth was, the tone and the body language eliminated everything so you could actually focus on the words being spoken. How often do you not hear what your spouse says because you already got caught up in the tone and in the language, in the body language? You didn't even hear it. You didn't hear it. So many times she says, that's not what I said. I'm like, yes, you did. And then I'm realizing now, it's not what she said, it's what I thought she said with the way she was saying it and the language that she was using, or her body language.
Can you guys all tell who uses the body language when we're having this conversation?
That's ridiculous! So, if 7% comes from words, this really matters. How we communicate to each other. Verbal words. Matthew 12:36 says this, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give an account of every careless word they speak. And by the way, it's in what we project. So let's say your tone. You're not going to be able to get off. That's something that the Pharisees would say. Well, I said this, and the guy's going to say, yeah, but you were jumping up and down and you were screaming, and you really said this. We like to get off on technicalities, men. There's no technicality escaping. Verse 37 is this, by your words you will be justified, by your words you will be condemned. This communication matters when this world that we're talking about, in this whole idea of waiting well, how do we process all of that? Proverbs 25:11 says this, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. Words, again, they matter. So oftentimes when we're getting ready to have a heart talk, we're going to talk about that later, or a communication, do we start this conversation with, I just want you to know before we get into this, I love you, I need you, I care about you. Hey, by the way, you're the perfect provision for me. We're not talking about that. That's established, but I want you to know that. We don't use those kind of words. And the bottom line is it takes this practice. That's what's funny about the two of us. I know she doesn't believe it, but today I did a really good job of just sitting there and listening and then not saying anything. Because normally it starts out, she's telling me about her feelings, and then eventually, if I talk, it becomes how her feelings are really about me, and it's all about her. See, you know how it works, right? Very soon she's saying, you need to work on this, and then before I know it, I wouldn't do that if you did. So I'm learning. It's okay to say nothing and to not speak at all. Hardest things on the planet, to not speak when your wife is accusing you of everything you've never done.
Never, honey?
Hey,
okay.
It's my story.
It is your story.
It's my story.
Okay. We're still talking about waiting well.
Yes, we are.
When we have a relationship, we're in a relationship, a friendship, a marriage, where another person is struggling.
Yeah.
And people struggle for all kinds of reasons. Things that have happened in their past, things that are happening in a relationship, things that have happened currently. So how do we wait well and, again, create that cozy garden? So questions that we can ask while we're waiting for the person, trying to wait well. What is my job? What is my part? What is my responsibility right now in this situation? Now, something that we encourage couples, and we mentioned to you guys in the beginning, is what am I responsible for in this relationship? What did I do that got this relationship to where we are now? You can ask questions and you can evaluate yourself for where you're at right now while you're waiting. What have I done? What can I take ownership for? I think it's important to remember that in every relationship, both people need God's forgiveness. Okay? I would tell my kids, I've said this to you guys, yes, you shouldn't have hit, but you pinched. When you got hit, you pinched. Like, both people are doing something in a relationship for the most part. And we both in a relationship need forgiveness. We need God's forgiveness. It's easy to cast a stone at the other person for what they did. But we need to recognize the things that we do. We need to take ownership, and we need to seek forgiveness while we are waiting. And you know what? That can even bring healing. While the other person is waiting, maybe you could recognize what you have done, and you could go to that person and apologize for what you have done. And that could contribute toward healing the relationship. Are there boundaries that I need to set during this time while you're waiting? Are there boundaries that I need to set? What is God's job during this time while we are waiting? While I'm trying to be patient as my spouse is going through this tough time. What's God's job? What's my spouse's job? And make sure that I'm not interjecting in an unwanted way. What would be true to me and to God? What would that look like while I am respectfully waiting? What does that look like for me and my relationship with the Lord? How am I growing with Christ during a time while I am patiently waiting for my spouse to feel like, hey, we can come together in this cozy garden and we can have a solid relationship? What do we do? How do we wait? How do we wait well? I think it's important to have a commitment to wait, okay? It can be very easy to just discredit that and just be like, I'm done with this. But we need to have a commitment to wait. I wanted to share something that was really, really neat. And this book I recommend for every woman. It's called Every Heart Restored, A Woman's Guide to Healing in the Wake of a Husband's Sexual Sin. And you might say, you know, my husband doesn't have any sexual issues. Well, I don't know why I need to read that book. But I'm just telling every woman in here, this will help you understand a man and his sexuality greater than any other resource I've ever. And somebody wants to point one out to me, that's great. I would read it. But I'm saying this book is amazing at helping you understand a man's sexuality. But one of the things that she said in here, actually her husband said of her, and I'm going to read this to you. The author is Fred, his wife is Brenda, and he said, Brenda began a long, torturous journey working with God to heal my wounds and rebuild my mind. If you guys are not familiar, this book comes from the Every Man's Battle series. It's a great series for men who struggle with just all kinds of sexual addictions, sexual thoughts, but they even have Every Woman's Battle. They have that in the series. They have Every Young Man's Battle, etc. So it's a great series of books that deal with sexual issues. So he says, when he refers to wounds and rebuild my mind, he had a strong addiction with pornography. He says, forgetting her own wounds, she found the grace and mercy to see the big picture. With the help of Christ's eyes, she chose to focus instead upon God's call on her life as my wife and sister in Christ. I'm so grateful. Without her, there would be no Every Man series, and I would be no author. She waited well while her husband was going through strong sexual addiction. She loved him well. She understood her place in the relationship and what she could do to contribute while she was waiting for him to go through all of the issues that he was going through. And so I just want to tell everybody, while one of us might be hurting about what the other person is going through, we never know how God can use our marriage to strengthen the other person, to grow the other person, for God to do a great work in the other person. But we have to make that commitment that we're going to stick with it. We can't just decide, you know what, your garbage is taking too long and I just can't deal with this any longer. That's not up to us to make that decision. We stay committed, we wait well in a relationship.
Yeah, that's really good.
So.
Well, we're running out of time, but we want to just give you a little short spurt of where we're going. This waiting well, this whole picture of the cozy garden, how to deal with it and what it's all about is going to lead us into this idea of the reactive cycle. And what we're going to do is we're going to be talking to you guys about your triggers, things that trigger you, that play a part in your life. And it's really important that you understand that your reactive cycle is right here on the board. And I'm going to use this example really quickly, and just so you kind of get an idea where we're headed. So we're talking about the cozy garden. We're talking about this life. We're talking about how we interact with each other. We could call it an interactive zone. It's where we want to have the greatest marriage of all time. But we have these things that get in our way. We call it the reactive cycle. And so here's a classic example for Crystal. Here's Crystal. Crystal has some wants. She wants to feel useful, validated. She wants attention. She wants to feel important, and she wants to have joy. And so what does she do? I'm not feeling that right now, she says to me. And so she says, Crystal feels, I feel insignificant. It's a trigger. She has these wants in her life, and all of a sudden she's triggered that these aren't happening. And so she says, listen, I feel very insignificant. So what do? Because I feel insignificant, my response is going to be, I'm going to react by adding value to Ron. So I say, listen, if I add value to Ron, then he's going to be grateful, and he's going to think that I'm useful, and I'm going to feel wonderful, and everything's going to be great. Sound good? Yes, until I get involved, because all of a sudden, Crystal starts adding value to me, and all of a sudden I feel insignificant. I'm like, what, am I not good enough? I mean, I can't keep up with all that. Why are you trying to change me? Don't add my value to my life. Don't you just love me for the way I am? And I sit in that spot and I'm inadequate, and I'm like, whoa. So then I become dismissive, like, I don't want to hear that. So what does that do? That creates her feeling of insignificance. So now all of a sudden, I'm dismissed, she's insignificant, so what does? She pours it on even more. She's like, I can help you more. I'm like, no, stay away from me. And we get in this ugly cycle and circle, and so this is what happens.
Well,
yes.
And what happens for Ron,
yes.
he just wants acceptance. And when he doesn't get acceptance, when I've done something that demonstrates that, he feels inadequate, right? Yes?
Yes.
And then you become dismissive.
Yes, I do.
So I feel insignificant, and I want to add value, and we go around the cycle. And you guys have maybe heard of the crazy cycle. It's also love and respect refers to it as the crazy cycle. But what we want to teach you guys and share with you is how you will identify wants that each of you have in your life. Different things, like we listed different things that we wanted, and we had quite a few, but then we starred like the main ones, and then even triple starred the bigger one. But then what buttons get pushed, and then when those buttons get pushed, how does it make you feel? And when you begin to recognize this, and under each one of those, we had more. So we put the wants and we showed you 5 of them, but in the other ones, there's also 5. There just wasn't space to list them all.
We'll get into that.
But we want to teach you how to recognize what it is that you think you want in life, and when it doesn't happen, what is happening to each of you, what button gets pushed, what is the reaction then that comes out of you, and then the cycle that it builds. And we want to teach you then how you will build space into that. You will recognize what is happening. You'll think, and I've said it to Ron, I was like, I just did something to trigger you. Like, and we both did, like his whole demeanor changed, and I had obviously done something. And I was able to say, like we both knew, we got to create space here. What did I just say to trigger you? And so then we paused a little bit. He kind of thought through it. He came back to the conversation. He said, I actually realized it didn't have anything to do with this. It actually happened. And I'm still thinking through that. And so it's good. It's very useful. We hope that you guys will join us on this journey to grasp this so that you can recognize what's happening in your relationship.